Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Reckless A Talk, our TTRPG interview show where we sit down with some of our favorite writers, players, GMs, and streamers to get to know a little bit more about what makes them who they are. I am, as always, your host, DM Nathan, and I am really excited to introduce you to this week's guest, Connie Chang, the GM and creative producer for Transplanar, a well-produced, all-transgender, BIPOC-led original fantasy D&D show. There are a select few GMs in the space whose stuff I watch that almost exclusively excites me or challenges me or just otherwise blows me away, and Connie is definitely one of them. They are an absolute powerhouse, whirlwind of a creator and game designer and person, and they are absolutely filled with joy and enthusiasm and thoughtfulness. He brings so much of himself to every performance and is a really positive influence on and advocate in the space. We talk about bringing all of your experiences and passions into what you're doing, the beauty of having rules and ignoring them, taking your show seriously, and celebrating your voice and value. I don't really know what else to say. Connie is just really fantastically cool, and so is Transplanar, so I'll just get out of your way and let you listen to this episode. Enjoy, and see you on Tuesday for our next episode of Reckless Attack. Hello, Connie.
Hello.
How are you today?
I am doing quite well. It is a dreary Boston morning, quite overcast. The rain is dripping down the window, but in a really nice way. It's good for the amphibians out there.
First of all, I'd imagine many Boston days are kind of a similar vibe, at least reputationally, from what old literature teaches me, that's just kind of
You're
the
not
vibes
wrong.
But also
You are not wrong.
in classic Connie fashion, described it very artistically and very masterfully. So for those listeners who do not know who you are and what you do, can you please tell them who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Yes. So hello, I am Connie. My pronouns are they, he, and she. I am known across the internet as by Connie Chang or GM Connie Chang, BYCONNIECHANG. I am the GM and creative producer for Transplanar RPG, which is an all-transgender, POC-led original dark fantasy D&D show set in an original non-colonial anti-Orientalist world based off of various Asian mythologies. It's about hope, choice, destiny, and queer drama set against an apocalyptic backdrop. So if that's interesting to you, we do stream our main flagship D&D campaign Saturdays at 8 p.m. US Eastern Time. And we're just about wrapping up. We have 8 arcs total. We are wrapping up arc 6 as of this recording. But we also have a whole podcast backlog, a YouTube channel with all past VODs, which is all pre-recorded, all edited, background music, sound effects, all that stuff. So if you like audio drama style, role play, character heavy, cinematic combat sort of thing, definitely check us out. Outside of Transplanar, I am also a game designer and a freelance RPG writer. Most notably right now, as of this recording, I am working on developing the ashcan of an original holy punk PBTA game for one GM and one player. I'm calling God Killer. The GM will be the God Killer. The player will be the God Killer, and the GM will be, well, of course, the God or the gods they're trying to kill.
Makes sense to me.
So that's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun so far. The folks at Magpie are great. Outside of that, I am a general purpose actual play GM / performer, performing at various other tables, doing cool things with really cool folks, and in my day job, I somehow find the time to have a day job.
Yeah, right.
I am a narrative designer with Bungie.
Yeah.
And when I'm not working, I am collecting frog memorabilia, which I feel like we have a lot of common ground there.
Immediately,
yes.
two kindred souls look across this video call to one another.
I know. We literally, before this recording, we lifted up 2 different little frog icons, which was great. I'm collecting frog memorabilia and freaking out about my cat, Bao Bao. So I feel like I covered a broad series of bases there.
You know, what I really appreciated about that intro is that it was a very oh no, I know the things I need to say. And it's the Transplanar spiel it's the thing, it's the real word thing, and then it's frogs, and then it's a cat, and then like boom,
You know it.
plowed through the
You
note
know it.
cards, nailed it, got it, and won. Some people really back into it, like, I do this, and I'm technically on here for this thing. Not Connie. He was ready.
Listen, I practice this every morning in the mirror. I do my spiel to myself.
I get up like everybody else, and I go to a mirror and I just recite my professional bio, just like we all do, and then put pants on.
Yeah, every morning for me, it's like the American Psycho routine. I do my skincare, I look at myself, I repeat the spiel.
Oh boy, that is a specific vibe and image. So, like you said, you are extraordinarily busy. How did you get into tabletop role-playing games?
Yeah, so I didn't really start doing any sort of TTRPG, anything, even playing a home game, writing, homebrewing, anything, until like 2015, honestly more like 2016, right after high school really was the time, and the reason why I hadn't gone into TTRPGs until then was because up until then I was laboring under the misconception that it was something that only like nerdy white dudes did, because you said TTRPG, I thought D&D, I thought the two things were the same. I didn't know there were other TTRPGs, right? I thought it was just like grids and miniatures and math, and I didn't know role-playing was at all a part of it. It just felt to me as some sort of especially nerdy LARP-ish extension of board gaming, right? So I never really thought about it. And what got me into it is all my high school friends after we graduated, they started listening to like Adventure Zone, right? And I was like, what is this thing that you all are talking about? I've never listened to a podcast before in my life either. So I gave it a listen, and I fell in love with it. I didn't realize what a D&D game could be until I listened to this actual play, until I realized, oh, this is blending drama with role play, with like storytelling and these emotional arcs, and also these this really cool lingua franca, right? Like of classes and feats and, D20s and crits and whatnot that like the audience could also share in, right? So that really appealed to me, and I started GMing. My first ever play experience was GMing, and I think that says a lot because I've been a forever GM since then, which I really enjoy. That is the way. A home game with my high school friends. So we stayed in touch a little bit. Like I GM'd them like once or twice a month over Discord, and whenever we got came back to Boston for like school breaks, I would offer to host like a special one session of all of us in person. So that went on for like a year or so, very inconsistently though. As is the way, and it eventually died, and we never got to finish it. As is the way. So that was my first interaction ever, really, directly with TTRPGs. And after that, I was bit by the bug. I had to keep scratching the itch, so I started various home games in college. One of which I GM'd with my partner in it, C. Thomas, who is also one of my cast members and my producer on Transplanar. And we got to know each other a little bit more through that. And actually, we GM'd like a 1 to 2 year long campaign from like junior to like senior year. And that was like the first campaign we did from start to finish, which was honestly a triumph. If you've ever started and finished a home game, congratulations.
Yes, we did just before we launched. We started as a home game. And we went back and finished it, mostly just to say that we had finished a campaign.
Listen, it's a huge victory. You should feel very proud of yourself if you ever finish any kind of campaign. It's a huge achievement. So that happened. I cut my teeth a little bit on GMing that way. I played in some other friends, D&D games, especially junior, senior year. Like my friend group in college was really starting to get into D&D too, which felt really cool. And then, graduated in around 2019. We escaped COVID.
COVID college.
COVID college. We escaped it literally by the skin of our teeth because we were literally the last class to get out of there and have the full college experience, right? Which I feel very lucky about. And since then, I decided, hey, I've been listening to Adventure Zone, I've been listening to NADPOD, I've been listening to Critical Role, and this cool new thing called Dimension 20 is coming out. Like, I kind of want to do that. I was like, it seems like a lot of fun, and also I don't see a lot of projects that are led by people of color that are trans majority, if not all trans. So that's sort of what spawned the initial idea of Transplanar. And I'd already had like a couple years experience GMing at that point. And a lot of the other artistic hobbies I've had for my whole life fed very, very fluidly and dynamically into my game mastering. Improv, which I've been doing like since middle school, screenwriting, which is what I had have a BA in, as well as critical race studies, which informed my approach to non-colonial anti-orientalist world building, as well as spoken word poetry, fiction writing and all that. So I blended / continue to blend all of these artistic and creative interests of mine into pretty much every actual play session I GM, and it scratches that itch. And that's sort of how, I got into TTRPGs and how I transitioned to actual plays and how I started Transplanar itself.
So, first of all, thank you for the full, that was the full gamut of how you have evolved into the powerful Connie that we see in front of us today. So something, first of all, that was interesting to me, and I knew that you had done screenwriting in college, and I've talked to a couple other GMs who are also screenwriters in college, and so I was curious. My understanding is that screenwriting is kind of its own thing, right? You're in control of the narrative from start to finish, more or less. You are working on your own. And then there's the other side of things, which, of course, actual play is not. Improv is very much not those things, other than as a GM, you have some modicum of control and narrative nudging. So between kind of those two things and those two passions and interests, what is different about that for you, and what kind of creative fires does that light in a way that is not shared or maybe is shared by screenwriting?
Yeah, so I think there is a stereotype of just writers in general as being introverted people who sit in a dark room and they churn out this genius manuscript and they send it off and then it's out there, right? It is, I would say, just based on my experience, it's both extremely accurate and also extremely inaccurate, right? It's both. And I think the part of it that is accurate to me is it can be a very isolating practice unless you have a writing partner and unless you attend writing workshops, and even then it's your baby, right? Especially if you don't have a co-writer, right? It's your thing. Even if you workshop it, even if you get feedback, you have to take that feedback, go into your dark room and write, right? And this is true for not just screenwriting, it's true for a novelist. I would say it's true for a lot of people who just write, and that has always been my least favorite part of screenwriting. My favorite part has been the dramaturgy. It has been just, I like writing. I like actually sitting down and banging out on my, I'm a little, mechanical keyboard here, which sounds like an ancient typewriter, and drives my partner up the wall.
I was going to say, but is a bug for some and a feature for others.
Yes, exactly. So it's interesting because GMing allows me to do the thing that I miss the most when I write alone, which is, one, collaborate with other people in a spontaneous and improvisational manner, and two, perform. Right? Hold court in front of an audience. That is so much fun for me. And also all of this is structured. It's a game. It's not just improv, where there are games in improv as well, but it's very loosey-goosey. There's no, you don't have to roll dice to resolve uncertain outcomes, right? And you don't have to abide by, the features and powers of our class or whatever. But in actual plays, these rules, the structure allows for spontaneity and invention in a way that that fully or more unstructured play like improv comedy or any sort of unscripted performance, I think doesn't, because it is a game, because there is, like I mentioned earlier, a lingua franca. And if anyone has ever listened to even 2 seconds of Transplanar in any way, or basically anything I've GM'd, you'll know that, I'm screw the rules. I have cool. I'm very I do not feel beholden to the rules, especially if they get in the way of my players attempting something really cool or something really thematic. But I do think that the rules provide a really cool starting ground, a common understanding, and a fun, ideally fun, ludic framework through which to understand the world we're building together and to realize these are the tools and the toys I have at my disposal. Here are the tools I want to use, and here are the ones I don't care about. Let's build our own toolbox here.
Absolutely. Kind of as an extension of that, why are you the forever DM? Other than if I am DMing, then that means at least someone is.
So I have a fake answer and a real answer, and the fake answer is also real, but it's less real.
Yeah.
And my fake answer is I really like telling stories for my friends. I like seeing looks of horror and shock on their face as I describe something horrific and shocking. I like sort of taking everyone's desires and like infusing them into a greater plot and being like, this is why your characters matter. I like narrating things, and I like sort of describing the world and being sort of the agent of chaos that, you know, players respond to. Like something about being the rest of the world and being the rest of every single other character in the world is very appealing to me. And which leads me to the real reason why I like GMing, which is that I am a control freak.
Yeah.
I love to be able to be like, this is what's going on. This is what the session is going to be about. This is the plot. You know, like, this is the world. What do you do? You know, I love, you know, very structured, structured play, right? My Virgo rising is coming out. I'm like, we're gonna have fun with rules. Like, this is how we're having fun, etc. And I also, you know, ever since I was a child, really, like, I've always loved, you know, younger sibling vibes. Like, you know, I like the spotlight in a lot of ways. I like to perform. I like to make people laugh. I like to make people smile. I like to make people, you know, grab the edges of their seats and wonder what's going to come out of my mouth next, right? And a lot of ways, like, that itch is really scratched when I get to GM for my players, because I get to see their reactions, their face journeys, and I feed off of that energy. Don't get me wrong, I really love playing. I love inhabiting a world that someone else has built, and I love being a character in that world. But something about GMing just comes, I think, a lot more naturally, in a lot of ways enthusiastically for me as well. Not that I don't love performing and playing, I really, really do. But they're like, it's like apples and oranges, right, for me. And I'm an orange person.
Yeah. So that's really interesting, because, you know, something that I have always just kind of contemplated as someone who is making things for an audience is that there is kind of there's those multiple levels of kind of engagement, right? Where, like, at the core, it is you and your players at the table, virtual or otherwise, and getting those reactions. And then it's the audience who's listening or in the chat or whatever. And then is kind of like amorphous social media sphere or whatever. So something I'm always interested in for people who have kind of taken the step to do a creative work for public consumption. You know, you had your home game, you completed a campaign successfully, you had all of that nice feedback in the moment with your players, right? And kind of were scratching that itch. What was kind of the decision point or realization point or whatever that you said, I want to do this for an audience and as its own thing, as a show, as a network, and really, really go for it?
Yeah. So for me, playing D&D in terms of it being an actual play is an artistic practice for me. It is very creatively fulfilling. And I've always known, ever since I was a child, that that's what I wanted to do for my profession. I wanted to do something artistic. I wanted to do something creative, much to the chagrin and horror of my mother, who's very much
we can
like
all just kind of
Dr. Lawyer.
nod. Yep,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, she's like, Dr. Lawyer, scientist, like, what are you doing? But I'm like, you know what, Mom, I want to struggle financially, so don't worry about me.
My career ambition is to struggle financially.
Yes.
Yep.
That is my career ambition. It's and look where I am now, Ma. But she doesn't understand what I do at all, which is fine.
Yep.
So yeah, after graduating, there was a moment in time where my partner and I were like, well, where do we want to go? Are we going to go to move to Boston, where we have a lot of roots and a lot of like family and friends, and there might be some career opportunities there? Or are we going to move to LA? Like, Connie, you're going to do your Hollywood thing. Are you going to try to like make it as a writer in the entertainment biz? You have some connections there. Your sister's out there. Or do we want to go? Let's go to the Midwest. Let's go to Minneapolis. And that reason percolated because at the time, this was maybe 2.5 years ago. Yeah, basically basically 2.5 years ago, my partner was performing with a theater company out there, actually an all transgender theater company as well. And they were basically part of this show that had been in the works for literal years.
Mhm.
And they were like, this is going to be our final, we're going to finally put this show together and like perform it. And like, I just need, and it's in Minneapolis, and I just need to finish it out. And once we finish it out, we can like decide where we go from there. And I was like, that's cool. I'll find something to do in Minneapolis. So right out of college, I got an internship at like an indie publishing press because I thought maybe I wanted to do like book writing or like get into publishing in some way. And that was a really great experience. It introduced me to a lot of really cool poets and like what the publishing industry was like. Indie specifically, which is so different, right, from anything I'd experienced up until that point. My partner did their theater thing. And during that time, I was like, well, I need something else to occupy myself with, aside from this internship and aside from like this like nonprofit data entry job that was, putting money on the table. Right. And I was like, I need something else to do. So I was like, well, I'm feeling a little creatively unfulfilled. Like I could be keeping up with some sort of artistic practice better. Why not make an actual play? It just sort of came naturally. I was like, I like D&D. You like D&D. Let's do something D&D related and see what's out there. So I GM'd a series of one-shots for my local queer Facebook group in Minneapolis. I posted in this queer exchange being like, I'll DM some one-shots who wants to play. Cool. And like literally 100 people responded because if you offer people a limited experience that you GM and a time and a place, they will show up. That's like the best way to get any players at your table. Absolutely. And this was all pre-COVID, right? So we also used those series of one-shots. I think I ran like 3 or 4 total as like a way to sort of like soft cast, to sort of like gauge like who of these people are, do we vibe with? Do we like their, energy? So I ended up casting at the time Max and Lyra, as well as Erica, who was part of C's theater troupe, and that they performed together before and they knew each other very well. So they were like, we bounce off of each other well. So we definitely wanted Erica, and we wanted like 2 other people. And I knew, from the jump that I wanted this to be an all transgender venture. And I also wanted there to be, people of color at 50% at least, if not more, in terms of at the table. That was important to me as well. So that's how Transplanar started. We met, we began recording, we did our thing. A year passed. We got to know the Twitter sphere on Twitter and beyond in terms of the TTRPG community. I got to meet so many cool people. We invited like 4 and then eventually 5 other cast members on as Lyra had to step away to pursue her own music career. And Transplanar just sort of like ballooned outward from there. And I know from the jump that, that very first session 0 that we had, it was more of like a session -1. Like before we were even talking about the world, we were talking about what we wanted the show to be. I have always been very adamant from the beginning that this is a show, not a home game. And that, I was also very pragmatic. I was like, we're very likely not going to be the next Critical Role or like the next Adventure Zone or Dimension 20, but that doesn't mean that I don't care about the quality of the narrative and the investment of ourselves into our character arcs and how we perform, right? Like this is a performance. All I've ever asked for my players is that they show up and they perform to the best of their ability in a given day, because the best varies, right? And I'll take care of the rest. And that's sort of like how Transplanar started and how we grew from there. And our, guiding values have always been diversity, representation, inclusion, and equity at the table, as well as we treat this like a professional venture, because we had a pulse check basically maybe a year in after our anniversary with the OG cast, where I was basically like, hey, it's becoming pretty clear that this thing is starting to take off. And I know originally when we talked about it, it was very low stakes, and we were like very much like, just show up, we'll just play. Yeah. But it started to become a little bit more than that. Like, not to sound arrogant at all, but it was just the reality of the situation. We had to be practical about it. And I was like, this is no longer just us. It's more people are involved in terms of an audience and a platform and a brand that we're building. Are you in or are you out, basically? Like no hard feelings if you're like, this is actually too much for me. Like this is not what I signed up for originally. And everyone was like, no, we're all in. Like we understand. We want to be professionals about this. So I've always been very transparent with all my players, the expectations and the kind of show this is and our priorities and whatnot. And I'm a Virgo rising, Aries sun. So everything I do, I like put 100% of myself into, and I hold very high standards for myself as well. Like I can't just half-ass something; I have to full-ass everything, right? But my Aries sun does mean I run out of energy very quickly. So my guiding star through all of this, the thing that's kept me motivated, the thing that's kept me on top of the wagon instead of falling off has been my partner, C, who is a behind the scenes and in front of the camera, absolute wizard, absolute juggernaut of a person. They are the stage manager for Transplanar. They like run everything. They do all the scheduling, like so much of the communication, like so much of the production work. They take a lot of like the lion's share of that work really, so I can focus on GMing, which is also a lot of work. And honestly, I don't know how any other channel does it without at least one full-time producer, because it is a ton of work. And oftentimes absolutely. For very little pay, if any. So that's another reason why I hustle so hard, because it's important to me to get my players and myself paid for the work we do, which was not possible when we were first starting out, because no one knew who the hell we were.
Right.
But it's starting to become a little bit more feasible, right?
Oh, first of all, that's very exciting. As someone also who has a glimpse of the difficulty of it, that's awesome. Congratulations. That was wonderful, because now I have 14 follow-up questions. The first easiest follow-up question is so just for timeline purposes. So when for those listening, when did you guys like go into like pre-production / start recording / air kind of like episode 1 of Transplanar?
So for the first year, maybe year and a half, basically from arcs 1 through 4, everything was live. So we went live end of June 2020. I remember because we wanted a Pride Month launch, and it was at the very end of Pride Month. And that was something that we'd been preparing for since, I want to say, like March of that year. And I'd been running one-shots all through the winter, and it wasn't until like March that we got together and we had that session 0, and then maybe in April we did like several off-stream games just to like build a table dynamic and just like get to know each other, right? Because that felt really important to us. We weren't going in cold, right? So we launched June. I set all of our social medias up. I did all the little graphics for our Twitch panels. I put together a little YouTube page, the Twitter page, all of that. Like we had all of our ducks in a row before we pulled the trigger, so to speak. That's such a violent saying. I don't know what. I'm sorry.
Jumped ducks. In before we turned the cameras on. Yeah, the lights on. I don't know. Something.
All the ducks in the row before we fed them delicious carrots.
Yes, exactly. And kept them alive and happy throughout their whole natural lives. Yep.
Yes. So that is sort of how Arc 1, episode 1 came about. And we did, and then we live streamed at first for maybe like the first 5 to 8 episodes of our show total. It was every other week, a bi-weekly basis. So it'd be like every other Saturday. But then we were like, this sucks. Let's do weekly. Like this is actually really bad, both for remembering what the hell happened last episode and also for building an audience. So we were like, why are we doing this? Let's just do every week. Can we do every week? And we did. And that persisted until the end of arc 4. And then we switched to a pre-recording model. And this was also after we brought on like 4 new cast members too. It was just a lot more feasible pre-recording wise to like wrangle everyone's schedules and also contribute to a higher quality of the show itself. We were able to get in an audio mixer, like a person to master our audio levels, and C is also our video editor, so they were able to edit every episode. So they were like 2.5 hours or shorter, because 3-4 hour long streams were becoming untenable, both for ourselves and for our audience. And we released our podcast a year after our stream had started. So right around like arc 4, I want to say, we released arc 1, episode 1 in podcast format, which is fully edited. And I want to say, like, for the first half of the first arc, I was doing all of the podcast editing, which was a ton of work. Indeed. And then C started doing it, right? And then we were able to get funding for like a dedicated podcast editor. Like, thank God. That was like a game changer, a literal game changer. Cannot recommend getting your own editor if you have the money enough. It is a huge investment. So yeah, our podcast is maybe 2 arcs behind at this point. They're beginning to wrap up arc 4 as we on the front end wrap up arc 6. And the end is pulling into focus. In terms of
Yeah.
the pre-recording, we are in the literally in the middle of pre-recording arc 8, which is our final arc of the entire campaign, and we only have a couple of weeks left for that. Yeah, so it's been very emotional, and it's been
I was gonna ask before any of my other questions. What's that experience? I mean, we started off talking about how momentous and wonderful it is to finish a home game, right? How are you feeling going in to these last, recording wise, the last handful or however many sessions left of this 2+ year journey that has taken you to where you are today?
Man, I am absolutely gonna cry my eyes out. I'm just sure of it.
Natural.
Whether or not it's gonna happen on camera is the question. It's not if, it's how, right? So the end is pulling into sight. We're literally recording arc 8, episode 5 this Saturday. So in 2 days, because we're recording on a Thursday, this interview. And that's gonna be a lot. It feels like the culmination of everything, because it is. It's a culmination of everything I, as a GM, have been setting up for 2.5 years. It's a culmination of everyone's character arcs. For half of, 3 of our 8 cast members they've been setting it up for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And for the rest of our cast, they've been setting it up for months. I feel very excited. I feel nervous about what our audience is going to think of it. I feel very proud as well of all the work that I've been doing, of all the work that my cast has been doing, of all the work that C has been doing specifically as our dramaturg, as our producer, and our video editor. Truly, they're phenomenal. And I can't wait to share the story with everyone when the time comes. I think it's really I feel really good about it.
Good. That's important, obviously. It goes without saying, hopefully, but that is good that you are happy. So speaking of the story, when you were launching and getting ready and that kind of stuff, what was kind of the scope of what you went into this project, kind of knowing, either skeletally or specifically, as you were kind of going into what would turn out to be a 2+ year campaign?
Yeah, we didn't have an end point in mind when we first started out. We were just sort of like, let's just have it be a persistent campaign, right? And it ends when it ends. The end really winnowed into sight for me, I would say, maybe between arc 1 and 2, where I was like, okay, I think this is going to be an 8 arc venture. And I'm pretty sure each arc is going to have maybe 15 or 16 episodes. And I did kind of prescribe the arc and episode format and structure pretty early on. I want to say arc 1, we didn't really have I have to kind of forget, but I'm pretty sure this is what it was like. We didn't really have a endpoint in mind. We were just like, let's record this arc until it's done. And around episode 15, we were like, that feels like a good stopping point.
Yeah.
And then we were just like, let's keep that consistent. Let's do 15 episode arcs and let's do 8 arcs total. And we did the math, right? And we were like, math-wise, that's going to be 2 years. That's going to be 2.5 years of recording for us to do. And everyone knew that, and they were like, yeah, we're cool with it, which honestly, that's the part that astounds me the most, that no one was like, that's actually a lot of time of my life. That's my life.
Yeah.
Man, I'm out of here.
Especially
no
weekly, performance. It is a performance too. It is not just even to have something on your calendar for 2.5 years is a lot.
2.5 years.
And then for it to be week? What it is even more so. So that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a commitment, obviously a commitment for me as a GM and a showrunner, but it's a huge commitment for the players as well. And I feel very honored and grateful that they wanted to embark on this journey with me and still do and are. And so that has sort of been the start of the scope.
Yeah. Are you a writer, either just kind of generally or specifically for actual plays? Do you enjoy having kind of that 15 to 16 arc structure, to kind of write to or to kind of envision? Or is it something you have to constrain yourself and be like, I can't go overboard, I have this many episodes? Or is it somewhere in between?
So my dramaturg and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and we are in two different boats. In my boat, I really like having a specific number of episodes because that helps me structure the act of each arc. I'd be like, okay, this is, when they're first investigating, okay, shit's about to ramp up in these next few episodes. This is the midpoint. So some sort of twist or something needs to happen here, like a death or something. And then there's the back half is people are reeling from the midpoint, and then, okay, where they're rallying their forces to like do the final encounter, right? Like that helps me plan out each arc, and it helps me map along their wishes and their desires for their characters along my plans. So I like having the structure. I think so. My dramaturg also likes having like a certain number of episodes, but they less so like having a specific number that we're beholden to. They're more like they like a range. It'd be like, okay, this is going to be a 12 to 16 episode series, or like this is going to be a 20 to 23 episode venture, right? Which I have ceded ground because I've heard their side, and I'm like, fine,
partnerships
fine,
and whatever.
You're right, fine. And their logic, the reasoning is, as a player, when you are going into a long-term campaign, it's really hard to embody a character, play them out, and have them go through their own arc if there is a specific endpoint in mind, because that can feel constraining, and it can feel a little bit like, oh my God.
I have to get to where Connie needs me to be. I have to hit my mark.
Yes, I need to hit my marks, which can be difficult to hold on to, especially if you don't have a script. It's obviously different if it's scripted, right? Because then you're like, okay, this happens here. But in an actual play improvisational format, my players need room to breathe. They need room to explore different dynamics. They need room to carry out their own character arcs. They need room to build relationships with each other and NPCs. And that's not even mentioning the plot. Right? Like, that's just completely aside from the plot, right? So I have ceded ground, on that front. And my partner strongly feels that even like a 15, 16 episode run of an arc is not that much time for a long-term campaign. It's not that much time because maybe, especially if, the actual play series you're launching has the premise of these characters are strangers to each other. It takes a entire arc, maybe two, for the strangers to actually get to know each other. And then the plot too, right? So, and that was true for Transplanar. Like it took really arcs 1 through 3, I would say, for the main PCs to actually really start to get to know each other and their backstories. So I think, for the future flagship campaign of Transplanar after the second Stranger sunsets, I'm definitely keeping all of these lessons in mind, and I would be interested in looking at like a longer and more flexible format for each arc, right? Like maybe like a 20 to 22, maybe 22 to 24 episode venture per arc, as opposed to 15, 16 episodes.
You've been running for several years, but now have also been running Transplanar for also longer than I think a lot of other shows. So what lessons have you learned kind of throughout the process, not just about GMing, about writing, about producing, about any of it, that you would either tell past you or that you would tell someone else who was kind of looking to dabble into the space?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I have a lot. I have a lot of things. I would say to my past self or to anyone trying to break in, I guess, to the space, especially if you're marginalized in any way. I think, honestly, the first, I don't want to say biggest, but the first thing that comes to mind is this is an industry in flux. As of our recording of this podcast, this is a hobby transitioning into an industry. And because of that, there are a lot of growing pains. But also, there are no rules, which is both, I think, a massive pro and a massive con. I'll talk about the cons first. There's no industry standard for paying performers. There's no industry standard for paying artists, GMs, illustrators, producers. Avenues of financing are both obscure. Like people don't know how to get sponsored, and also variable, so variable. Some sponsors are like, we want this, and we'll give you this much. And some sponsors are like, yeah, we want this and we'll give you this much. And there's no standardization, nothing. Nothing. That is, I would say these are like some pretty major cons. And they become more apparent the more time you sink into this. Because if it's just a side thing you do like every other week, when you get home from work, you and some buddies hop on a Discord call and you upload it to YouTube. That's one thing. It's another thing if you're trying to like make it a side hustle in a real way, or to even transition to it for your full-time job, which honestly I cannot in good conscience recommend unless you have an audience already, unless you're already big on TikTok or Twitter, or you're already a Twitch partner. Honestly, like I don't think affiliate is enough. And I'm saying this as a Twitch affiliate, right? So like I'm not knocking affiliates. Like I say this as someone who is it
is me. It is behold, it is my
me.
mirror.
I'm literally talking about myself. Yeah. And I would say Transplanar, we even had a little bit of a head start because I had a semi-viral Tumblr D&D meme blog that I used to bump the launch of The Second Stranger. We had maybe like 80 CCV for our pilot episode, having had no connections in TTRPGs at all, which I would say is very successful for like the launch of a show that no one has heard about, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That is largely, that's because I had like 19,000 followers or something on Tumblr, which, it's Tumblr of all places, which is the worst place to monetize, which is the worst place to have an audience. Like I say this.
I thought you were just going to say like which is the worst place.
No, Tumblr users would agree. Yeah, it is the worst place.
I
but
mean,
actually,
any social media.
I would say it's much better now because a lot of the users went to Twitter or TikTok. So Tumblr feels like a lot. It feels like the ecosystem has cleansed itself a little bit more. But anyway, so that helped a lot with the launch of it, and like we have some viewers still in our Discord who are like, I was here from Connie's Tumblr, which is truly ridiculous to me. And if you're listening to this, Tristan, thank you for being here. So that's one thing I would say, which is this is a transitional space. Mm-hmm. So there are growing pains. I would say the pros of that transitional space are you can innovate. There's nothing stopping you from doing it, really, aside from time, which, let's be real, time, energy, right? Time, money, energy, and dedication and labor, right? And dedication to improving this as a craft or a skill. No one says an actual play has to be like this because there's no standard agreement for what an actual play is. So I have taken that to mean I want my series, I want Transplanar to be like an audio drama quality show. I want it to be sleekly produced. I want it to be consumable as a live show on Twitch and have an afterlife on YouTube, as well as a podcast format. And I want this to be like, even though we're playing D&D, we're not really playing D&D, right? It's more about the characters. It's more about the story. It's about the narrative. It's about the themes. That's what our audience shows up for. And that's where I think a lot of my screenwriting background shines through, is like having a really strong understanding of themes and how to make them bleed really red in a show. So that's the exciting part. Just look at innovations that other shows are doing, like Kolok. That is a really cool way to approach live play. That's a really cool way to approach actual play. Everything Dimension 20 is doing. Their latest show, as of this recording, Court of Fae and Flowers, integrating aspects of, I think, a Regency TTRPG, I think Good Society, or like they integrated some sort of mechanic, I forget exactly where it's from, into how they play D&D, and their approach, to world building, their approach to character, their approach to story. I had the absolute pleasure, privilege, honor, et cetera, of speaking to Brennan about this specifically, and like his approach to doing Dimension 20, which I think like it's I resonated with a lot. It's really similar to the values I hold, and I really think that's the future of this space too. Audiences, I think, true, and this is advice I would give to myself, which is I think an instinct I've always had, but also advice to other people entering the space. Audiences are hungry for new perspectives, for fresh takes on the same beloved tropes and genres and settings, and for like new talent doing interesting things in the space. So if you're coming in, I would think to yourself, how can you stand apart from every other actual play out there? Because there are so many of us. There's so many of us. How can you stand apart, both in terms of representation? Like, okay, like just straight up, you cannot be an all-white table. Like, I'm sorry, you cannot. Like, it's just in 2022, it's unacceptable. Like, you can't be an all-white table. That's just not, you just can't do that. It's just not the vibe. And it's just not the way to go. And it's also
especially
not right.
Big, anything bigger, especially anything that you want to take off, just can't do it.
Yes.
Can't do it.
If you're doing an actual play, You cannot have it on a white table, especially if you have any sort of funding in any way or any kind of platform. If it's a home game, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Like, play with your bro. Like, I don't care. It's a home game. You're doing that for fun. But as soon as you put on the actual play shoes, you got it. You have to. So that's my other piece of advice. Treat it like a job.
Yeah.
Treat this like take it seriously, right? Because that helps elevate our industry as a whole when everyone takes it seriously and everyone is committed to paying people equitably and to elevating the quality of your product, of your brand, of your show, right? If you know, and that doesn't mean you have to bleed and cry over it and like spend an ungodly amount of hours working on an overlay. It just means that you hold an awareness and an understanding within yourself that this is a show, that you're putting on a performance, that there are expectations beyond that of a home game, and that's not a bad thing, right? And I actually think it's a very, very good thing because you know, if we go in the other direction, for shows that are just like, oh, we're just a home game, but we just stream it. And I'm like, where are your captions? This is not accessible. Why are you all white? When you take it more seriously, it's better for everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In every sense of the word, for the audience, for the players, for the GM, for the industry. So that's my other piece of advice. And for yourself too, honestly, if you are actually serious about like growing your platform, if you take it seriously, you know, like it's much easier to grow. And honestly, the other biggest piece of advice I would have, I have two other ones I can think of, and I feel like I'm going on for a long time. But I have a lot of lessons I've learned that I want to pass on.
Connie, this is the format. Like I ask a question, I prod, and then people just answer with their whole selves, and it's great. And so you are fine. This is safe. And if it is too long, we edit. It's fine. No big deal.
Hell yeah. Cut out entire chunks of me blabbing about nothing. Yeah, I empower you to do so. But yeah, the other two pieces of advice, one would be don't discount yourself or the value you have in the space, right? This is specifically, I'm like talking to Fast Connie, right?
Yeah.
And also, you know, like if you're out there trying to break in, like especially if you're
marginalized,
benefit
from hearing that, right? You know?
Yeah, I know exactly, right? Like you are worth something. You have something valuable to bring to the space, and you have a perspective that no one else does. And this is true for everyone because we're all different, we're all special, we're all unique. So lean into that, right? Like lean into that as what sets you apart. Find your own voice. And this is side note. If you are a white creator in the space and you are sick of Eurocentric fantasy and you're curious about non-colonial and anti-Orientalist world building, but you're like, I don't want to appropriate, I don't want to overstep, I don't want to swerve out of my lane, my advice to you is lean into what makes you special. Is your family from like rural Maine? Did you grow up catching newts? You know, I'm serious. And like salamanders in like your local stream, lean into that. Like, did you, have like, are your grandparents from Switzerland or Sweden or Germany or the Netherlands? Like lean into that, like seriously, this is my, cause I always have to turn everything into like anti-racist sort of,
oh no, what a deep fault that is to be striving for justice and equality in all things. Wow, Connie, how dare you? He says, just shrugging at the camera.
Yeah, but seriously, something I see that happens a lot, I think, is whiteness as a social construct is obviously white supremacy, racism is very violent toward people of color, specifically toward Black people, specifically toward Indigenous people. But I would argue it's also really violent toward white people too, because by buying into the project of whiteness, by assimilating into this, right, like the Irish became white in America, you lose something too. Like you lose your own culture in a lot of ways, and you lose your own individuality, your own sense of who you are and where you're from, all to the altar of a homogenous kind of whiteness to white culture, right? So like I would say resist that shit, lean into your own culture, your own background. Like if you're a white person thinking like, what are your roots, right? And like, what is your own personal backstory too? Like, are your parents dentists and you have this weird thing about teeth and teeth monsters? Like do it, like there's everyone
Absolutely.
has this, right? So that's another piece of advice. That's a side free advice for white people out there. That's a side piece. And I think the one of the final pieces of advice I can think of would be Honestly, it's really about the people, both in terms of networking. If you want to grow, like building connections thoughtfully, genuinely, and intentionally, like it matters how you treat other people, and it matters how other people treat you, because people talk. People talk and people remember, for sure, for better and for worse. But I would hope mostly for the better. So don't treat people poorly. Be kind in the way you communicate with other people, even if it doesn't come to you naturally. Like I can be a very short person, I would say, like not because I am actively trying to be mean, but because I'm very efficient.
Yeah,
so I'll just be like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. And I think that's fine, right? And I'm I have ADHD, and I'm like almost positive I'm not neurotypical, but I would advise, like, if you can, putting in a little bit of extra effort in like being aware of how you come off to other people, right? And like how you treat them in session zeros, in Discord messages, on Twitter. It's important, right? Like be kind to your fellow industry person, and to your, just because it's just a good thing to do. And like there are people in the space, as we have seen online over and over again, who I think take advantage of other people. So this also ties into my other piece of advice, which is like know your worth, right? And especially to other people of color, especially queer people of color in the space. Like there will be times where specifically like white folks with something of a platform might reach out to you and be like, can you be on this show? Can you come on? Da, 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 da. And just, I know it's going to feel like an opportunity, and it will be, but like vet, right? Like ask around, like really do your research, and stand your ground if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, because you might be. And a word to you as well, that like there are people out there who will have your back too. Like make friends with other people of color, like make friends with queer people, trans people in the space. It will be life-changing, right? Like we are out there in full force and a lot of numbers. And I would say overall, like we tend to try to look out for each other, right? So I would say that's my final piece of advice. It's just be a good person, right? Because it matters and it's important, and how you talk to other people and how you treat them does reflect on you.
You mentioned, leaning into your own voice, right? And kind of your own experiences, your own perspective, and leaning into your own kind of individuality, both as a writer, and I'd imagine for all cast members for shows, is lean into what kind of makes you you and what is true about yourself. But what do you think is the Connie Chang voice? What are the stories, the moments, the whatever that kind of are an example of you, being yourself, and being yourself through your art?
I would say, and this is something I've discovered through doing rather than trying to prescribe to myself what my voice is. These are just themes and dramas I naturally gravitate toward. One of them is intense personal drama. So think like prestige television, like, and very queer as well. So like the L Word, I would say, like the intense drama of like Euphoria, and like the intense drama of like any sort, like Breaking Bad. Like when we look at like the relationships between like Walt and Skylar. I've also been rewatching Breaking Bad, so that's been in my brain.
I'm extremely due. I can't decide if I'm going to rewatch that or jump into Better Call Saul yet, but either way. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to jump into Better Call Saul after I finish my rewatch. So that's one thing. Intense, like very personal character drama. I love that shit. I love it. I feast on it. It gives me energy. Give me more.
And why? Can I ask? Like what gives you the juice?
It has the juice. I just feel like it's the easiest point of entry for an audience member, first of all, when characters are three-dimensional and have things they really want but can't have for whatever reason. Like that is an immediate entry point. That's just like screenwriting 101. Yeah. Right? Like who are they? What do they want? Why can't they have it? Like that's like 101. That's what you learn in like any intro to screenwriting class. And another reason is because like I never want to be, nor am I interested in being the kind of GM that's like, this is my magnum opus, and you are not but tiny side characters in my drama. Like I genuinely think that the draw of any actual play is both the GM, right, and like what the GM's capable of, and like the kind of story and the world they weave, but also like the main characters, right? And like the main characters of your campaign are your players. Yeah. So like obviously I'm going to focus so much time on them and like work with them to like figure out their character arcs and to figure out what makes them tick and to throw specific challenges at them, because that's what I and audiences at the end of the day remember and care about. It's these characters, right? And it's so much easier and so much more human, I would say, in a lot of ways to relate to someone else than it is like the concept of war.
Absolutely.
Like we humanize war, right? And we humanize whatever themes you're talking about in your campaign through characters, right?
Yes.
I remember something that Matt Colville said during, I think, one of his like running the game series, where he was like, a mistake I made when running, I think the chain. It's been a while since
I know. I'll be right there with you as we try to repiece it back
remember
together.
MCDM stuff. Yeah. I'm gonna be like, but Matt Colville, cool as hell. His production company's really, really cool. But I remember one of his running the game pieces of advice he had for himself is a mistake I made when I introduced my characters to various factions. At first is I just introduced them to the factions like kind of bloodlessly.
Yeah.
Like I just be like, this is this faction, they do this. This is this faction, they do this. And my parents didn't give a fuck. They're like, whatever, we're going to do whatever we care about. And he realized later that like he should have given them someone to care about, like an NPC to embody a faction in some way and to have specific motivations beyond just being a mouthpiece for that faction, right? Like that's what your PCs will remember and care about. So that's one aspect of character drama, right? The other aspect is just because it's just what I'm interested in, and it's just something I think I'm good at and that I enjoy doing, which is to like take knives and stab them. Yeah, stab my players with them. Yeah, like I'll take like shards of glass from your backstory, then stab them. Right,
it's the best.
I love doing that. It's so gratifying. So that's one of the Connie Chang signatures, I would say, and the other is grappling with like apocalyptic, dark fantasy, eldritch, unknowable, unfathomable themes. So like think like Thalergy and Thanergy from the Locked Tomb series, right? Or like the grand cosmic battle between the darkness and the light in the Destiny series, right? Or like stuff like that. And also like Cthulhu, but better because Cthulhu was made by a racist white guy.
Extremely, yes.
Like unknowable, like divinity,
yes,
right? Specifically godhood and divinity, unknowable, freaky, beyond like human understanding kind of like divinity, because that is really appealing to me. I love that shit. I love it when gods are weird, and there are even beings greater than gods, right? That's another thing I really like to explore, and that comes with dark fantasy as well. I really, really, really enjoy dark fantasy. I like running serious shows, like in terms of tone and flavor. Like a lot of the one shots I run on other people's channels too, and podcasts, and Transplanar, obviously it's all serious. Like I would say we're like 70-30 drama humor, and the humor is just spontaneous because I don't think you could have anything that's 100% drama without it becoming a farce of itself, right? So like I will also put in moments of levity just because it feels right, but also like I'm really interested in like a serious and dramatic campaign and story. Like that's what really scratches that itch for me.
We've talked a lot about the difference between a home game and an actual play and like a product. And you've detailed some of the stuff. And I personally really enjoy Transplanar's like production quality and the value in your performances that you guys give, especially kind of now, but also dating back to as you were ideating kind of what the vibe was going to be. What was important to you and kind of why about making it a show as opposed to, oh yeah, we just threw an iPhone out or we're recording our Zoom call or whatever. What do you think adds to the show by making it a show, if that makes sense?
Yeah. In terms of production quality, I would say it's like 100% of it is like the work that C does as an editor, and of course the work that Mike, our audio mixer, does as a mixer. There's a specific word for it that they've told me to use, but I forget. I'm sorry, Mike.
Our mic that we have,
Yes. So C does a ton of work every week preparing for Saturday's stream, taking our pre-recorded tracks and either adding the overlay to it if it hasn't already been added, or like just editing. Like there's so much editing. They edit it. They take out dead space. Like they take out parts that are repetitive. They take out
Yep.
rules arbitration. They take out like math, you know, and like, they squanch it down. And they also add background music and sound effects. And they have gotten really, really, really good at it. Like the music they choose it blends right in. It doesn't distract. It's at a good volume, and it like adds to the scene. Like I personally, it's always a balance to thread, right? But I think they do a really, really good job with it. And that is a huge part of it. Honestly, I would say that's all of it. Really, it's the fact that we pre-record and it's the fact that C edits, that Mike masters. That's all of it, I would say, in terms of production quality. And also like the art. The art also definitely elevates our stream. We have like full body character pieces for every single PC. That C is also our character artist. So they drew. So you can see like the secret sauce is C. So hire C, give them a ton of money, please. If someone just wants to sponsor C, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. So pay them like $100,000. And of course, like in terms of like the narrative quality as well. Wouldn't you know it, C is also our dramaturg. What that means is they work with every single of our 7 other players every week, and they go, what are your desires for this upcoming recording, and how can I help make that a reality? What are your ideas for your character? Oh, here are my ideas about that. Oh, what if this idea tied into that idea? Like dramaturgy, right? Dramaturgical lore keeping work. And they do that every week for 7 people and themselves and me as a GM. It's literally a full-time job what they do. So that's huge. They do a ton of like the player facing work. So they thread the character drama stories while I thread like the larger like plot stuff, and I like prepare the session itself. Right. And I facilitate the session when time comes. And a lot of it is also, I think, the mindset is treat like I mentioned like a million years ago, like treating this like a show, right? So being on, right? Like taking it seriously, like being focused, paying attention to scenes that you're not in. Staying inside and inhabiting the mind space of your character and responding as your character, as opposed to thinking above the table too much. And treating it like kind of almost like a narrative drama or an audio drama, as opposed to a home game where we're trying to like win, kind of, right? So that's a big part of it too.
What goes into you yourself getting ready to go on camera? Because I'm always impressed by your energy level, your focus, both your improvised and written descriptions of stuff, and just as someone who GMs for a show and just GMs generally and consumes things, it is always really cool and impressive. It always feels like a lot of work has gone into this, either actual work or just thinking work or inhabiting NPCs work or whatever. So what does your like week of prep look like?
Well, I have a dramaturgy meeting every week with C to discuss everything that all the players have brought to them, so I can like infuse my prep with it. And outside of that, I also just like prep the session. I usually have a pretty good idea of what the next session is going to look like, because I'm pretty good at like planning out and structuring an arc. So I'll be like, okay, this is the episode where we have a boss fight, or like this is the episode where shit gets heated, or like this is the episode where I'm going to introduce this twist. So I usually have like a general idea of like the general thing that's going to happen. And then it's prepping it. I have a different Google Doc. I'm a Google Doc GM. I have a different doc for every episode that we do. So I structure the doc and I populate it and with my notes. And like if I have any like specific kinds of set pieces or like specific kinds of like moves or actions or like a villain things, I'll also populate them with that. Right. I'll just sit down and like do my little thing. Like I would say maybe 80% of my prep is the meetings with C and sitting down and just doing it, like just like writing out my prep. And I have like a specific kind of way of doing prep, but I needn't to go into the granular details here if that's uninteresting or boring. And I would say like maybe 20 to 30% of it is looking at the major NPCs that are going to come up here and really thinking about their headspace for that particular episode. I'll be like, okay, this NPC is going to be in this episode. I'm like, there's a 99% chance I'm going to be playing them. What's on their mind right now? How are they going to be behaving? And just going through the NPCs and just like thinking about where they are. So in case they come up or in case my players interact with them, I'll be able to switch into them like that, like very quickly. And to a greater extent, like what makes them tick, what do they want, what do they need, right? And how are they different from each other? But that is like a deeper understanding of each NPC. And that's the kind of work I do when I first envision them. And this is more for like a session to session portrayal of the particular NPC. And of course, the day of recording, I treat it like we're live. I treat it like we have an audience of like however many people watching us, and I carry that kind of energy with me, right?
Mhm.
And I try to like be as engaging, and active and gesticulative, and compelling as possible as not just a GM and a facilitator, but also as a performer too. Because I'm putting on a show for the audience, and I'm putting on a show for my players. I want my players to be like very interested in what I'm saying and what's gonna like come next,
Yeah,
right?
it's a two-way street.
So,
Of being
definitely.
interesting, of they need to be interested, but also I need to be interesting. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
What has it been like for you to be a, kind of super air quotes public figure in the TTRPG space? As much as any of us are public figures in any respect, but not just generally, but especially as a marginalized person who is part of an obviously very proudly, very transparently group of marginalized creators. What has that experience been like for you as you've navigated the internet?
Yeah, yeah, for a wheel and for woe.
Yeah,
So it's been I would say overall positive experience. I am also very good at curating my social media
it's the best.
experience. I have like a block list. Like I have like a extension, like a Google,
Uh-huh.
Chrome extension that lets me block everyone who's liked a tweet,
The best.
which
It's the
is
best.
very powerful. I'm pretty sure my block list is in like the 5 figures at this point. So that has been no, like I'm dead ass. Like that
I
has been
100%
huge.
believe it.
Yeah,
I am giggling in like, I love that for you
an affirmation
kind of
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So that's been huge. So I've been pretty good at curating that experience because, my God, the internet can be ruthless, especially toward people of color, especially toward trans people, queer people. Like very bigoted waters we are sailing.
Yes.
And a huge refuge for me has been specifically seeking out and making connections with other people of color in the space. So like joining Utopia from when it like first started, Utopia TV, which is like an all BIPOC, for BIPOC, by BIPOC, about BIPOC, TTRPG variety channel. And just going out of my way, not even good, because that makes it sound like I've like done extra work. It really does not take that much work to find people of color in the space. Just like follow a few, and then the recommended follows will just pop up, and just follow them all. Like that's literally it. If you are trying to follow more people of color in the space, literally just follow me if you haven't already, and look at the people that I'm following, and just follow them. Like literally, that's all
go
you
down
need.
the Transplanar cast list, follow a lot of those folks, and then just it kind of branches from there. Easy.
Yeah, for better and for worse, the algorithm really does know the kinds of communities you care about. So like if you happen to just have a lot of people of color on your feed, you're probably doing something right. And if you're just like, wow, where are all the people of color? It's only white people. It's probably a you problem, buddy.
Yeah.
And you need to like do a little bit of
fixable you problem. Like you can get that taken care of. Easy.
It is so easy to fix. So that is one part of it, is finding my communities, right? Like not just Twitter, because Twitter's not a community, but like actual communities, right? The Transplanar folks, the specific friends I have, and whose friendships I, care about, right? Like that is important. I would say another part of it is what I said earlier about audiences being hungry for new perspectives, fresh voices, fresh blood, is also very true. What I have found to be true is people are kind of, people across all kinds of demographics are really interested in, like, people want tightly produced, like, narratively gripping, well-performed shows that say interesting things with interesting people and grapple with interesting themes. And a lot of the times I feel like the people who are best equipped to tell those stories are marginalized people, trans people, queer people, people of color, just because our experiences have historically been underrepresented in TTRPGs, right? So it's really a breath of fresh air when we come in and tell the kinds of stories only we are truly equipped to tell. So that has also been my experience as well. I have found that overall, companies I've worked with, people I've interacted with, have been very encouraging of and optimistic about and supportive of this change, from the kind of like OSR, from like the, the old guard of, the cis white dudes who, make questionable content.
End of, we all know, we're just nodding and be like, those ones. Yeah.
Those dudes. Yeah, the dudes. Boogie, woogie, woogie. People are hungry for a change, and people, a lot of people out there are genuine about the change too, right? And like authentically trying to push for it. I think the folks at Dimension 20 are one of the best vanguards of this change. Like, I truly think that what Brennan and Orion and all of those people are doing, pushing for, is coming from a genuine place, and they are not just talking the talk, they are walking the walk. Just like look at their casts for like up, their shows in like the past, recent series and seasons, right? Like it feels very encouraging, and I feel very lucky to be right now, I think, in a very good position, because I'm a trans person of color, I'm a trans Chinese American GM, and I also think that I'm quite good at what I do, and I'm very proud of what I do, and I enjoy what I do a lot, and I think that matters and that counts for something, right? But also, there has also been a lot of bad things too, right? Like, YouTube comments are literally the Wild West. It's just especially as an all transgender channel in this era of like massive transphobic and anti-trans legislation, of vitriol, mounting hate in like pretty much every corner of the world. That has been interesting. I've been pretty good at deleting comments and blocking people.
Curating
and
experience, always
yes,
key.
curating our experience on YouTube as well. But it is felt, and I am also aware that outside of this bubble I've built for myself, outside of this like encouraging like sphere, which I've very intentionally built, there is a sea of bigotry out there too, right? Like, just look at the freaking Amazon reviews for Radiant Citadel, right? I'm like, have any of you even read the book? Because as just if you want to talk objectively, just objectively as an adventure book, like, it is one of the best that WotC has put out in recent years. It's just really high quality. But people are review bombing it just because there are hateful, bigoted, racist, transphobic people out there who think TTRPGs is their own little bastion of like racism, and they get angry when people are like, hey, you actually can't be racist anymore in your game, so that has also been like something to deal with and witness.
Absolutely. I think I have just one more main question. And well, I have 1,400 still backup questions, but just for the sake of time, and just, I think, because it feels like the right time to ask it. You've been doing this for two years and change now. You are winding down, at least on the back end of your first flagship thing. You have been all over the place. You've been quoted in the New York Times, and you can answer this with the scope that you choose to. What has this experience meant to you? Having an audience, having a receptive audience who I presume are seeing themselves in TTRPGs in a way that they often do not, of you creating this sort of thing, of building an audience. Like, what has that been like for you? What, good, ill, or otherwise?
This experience has meant everything to me. It has been a truly incredible journey so far, that I feel like baffled in like a really good way and a really scary way to be a part of. And it's always so weird to me to think that I have any kind of audience at all.
Yeah.
Like, I'm aware of it. Like, my Virgo rising is like, yes, and we have to do this, and like create our audience this way. But like, deep inside, my Sagittarius moon is like, bruh, I was just sort of here to have a good time. Like, what the hell's happening? Like, what's happening? It feels a little bit like, it feels really good because I feel very, it's what any, ostensibly what a lot of creatives want, right, is to find an audience for the things we make, who see what we're trying to do and say, this is cool and this is worth something, and I'm here and I'm listening. And that means the entire world to me. It means literally everything, which also makes it scary. Because especially now in like the era of internet, it feels almost. I feel like I could, at any point I could lose it. Like, at any point anything could just shift and everything could change. Or like, I could just, what if I just lose the momentum and there's nothing I can do to get it back, right? Like, there are these, and that could happen. Like, and and the scariest thing is it could be out of my control, right? So like, that's also scary. I'm trying to ride the momentum. I'm trying to be smart about it. I'm trying to repel us up, 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 up. But like, it's also scary when I feel like it's not just me, right? It's also my partner. It's also my cast. It's also the Discord server with the Transplanar community I've built. And I don't want to let people down. I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let my partner down. I don't want to let my cast down. I don't want to let my audience down, in terms of like the quality of the show we produce or like anything else, really. So I think this has been an incredible journey, and it has also been an incredible lesson, not just in terms of like production lessons and creative lessons and like this is how I can be a better GM, but also in terms of like social lessons too, like learning to hold kind boundaries for myself and for other people as well, because I used to just sort of like take on as many opportunities and things that I could, regardless if it was paid or not, regardless of the platform of the person reaching out to me, because I was just like, I just felt so privileged and honored that people were reaching out to me in the first place. But like, it wasn't really until my partner pointed out, like, Connie, you are burning the candle at both ends. Like, you need to like protect yourself, like, not out of like meanness or like I think I'm too good for someone, but because I'm just like, I really can't. I'm doing so much already. I'm about to start a full-time job. Like, I have to set my priorities straight. I can't take everything that comes my way, and I feel really bad like forgetting to get back to people because my brain is a sieve, right? I'm never ever trying to be like a dick or anything like that. It literally just slips past my fingers. And if you've reached out to me and I haven't gone back to you, please do reach out to me again over DMs, because I just forget. I'm so sorry, I just forget.
Very unrelatable, Connie. I've never had that experience before personally, as a person who also gets DMs. I never forget anything. It never just disappears if I'm not actively looking at it. No, that's
definitely
that's
not.
What a strange
that's never been the case.
and maybe difficult experience that would be.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's been a lesson, and that's been an experience too, is like knowing that, like being like, hey, I really can't do this, but thank you so much for reaching out to me, like please reach out to me in the future, is like actually okay to say. Because I used to be like, like I don't want to say no to this person, right?
Absolutely.
So that's been a part of it too. But yeah, just overall it's been everything, and I'm just gonna like keep doing the thing, see where this takes us. I have high hopes. I'm very optimistic. I would say I'm an idealist in some ways about Transplanar and about my own journey in the space, and I really just want to like take this as far as it can go, and try to do right by the people who are watching me, and the people who care about me.
Where do you hope that it goes? Do you have concrete ideas yet, or do you have concrete ideas that you feel comfortable saying out loud to me / to people listening?
I have some little butterfly nebulous hopes that I really want to actualize, and I'm afraid of saying.
Yep. No pressure. This is not a gotcha kind of interview. So
yeah, no, I'm mostly afraid to say some things because I don't want to jinx it. That's part of it. I'm kind of superstitious. I don't want to jinx it. And also because I feel like it might happen, question mark. Like, my fingers are crossed. I really, really want it to happen. And like a part of me is like, if you say it, you don't, it's not gonna, or I don't know anything about anything. I live in ignorance, and I don't know what's okay for me to say and what's not. So I just, to be safe, I'm not going to say anything.
Connie, I am not going to be the reason. This show is not going to be the reason that you jinx yourself. So like, I am 10,000% behind the vague, like, I don't know, I sure hope that this thing happens.
Yes, that's exactly where I am. Yeah, I can say that for sure. I sure hope cool things will happen in my and Transplanar's future, and the futures of my cast members as well, because they're all so incredible and amazing. More generally speaking, I don't know, I guess it would be a 5 to 10 year goal, maybe 5 to 7, let's say, to start like or to join, or to do some sort of like, have like a live studio, because that would be a game changer. I would love to record shit live, to either like furnish my house or like rent out a space or something where we can actually put on like a live production or have access to a live studio. I think that is a goal, like a tangible, concrete thing I really, really want. Yeah. I think that's the only thing, honestly, that would elevate our production to the next level. Aside from having like a full-time video editor who's not C, because they need right, that would be the next logical step. But like the dream, right, would to have like a studio space. So that would be something I would strive for, because I think that's where I'm from. I'm from theater. I'm from improv. I'm from live performance on a stage. And I think that's where I would thrive, because video calls are great. I love the accessibility of, internet interviews and like internet play, actual plays. But there's something about the electricity of an in-person performance that I'm sorry, you just cannot capture through a Discord call.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's very tough, especially if there's video involved. Right.
Yes.
I feel like a podcaster, it's a little bit more like variable, but like, yeah, that would be the next move.
Out of respect, both for brain sieves and time, I think, Connie, I think if you're like emotionally equipped, you have steeled your will accordingly. It is now time for the lightning round of the Reckless Talk.
Let's do it.
I tell everyone the same spiel. There are no wrong answers. Everyone gets the same questions. It can be a one-word answer, and I will give an appropriate, respectful pause to be like, oh, okay, that's all he's going to say. Great. Or you could launch into a tangent. Also great. You say what you want to say. I'm not adding anything to it. And also, I can't think of anything right now. Also, legitimate answer. It is up to you. Also, no time limit, nothing like that. I am merely handing you paintbrushes to paint whatever sort of lightning round experience that you wish to paint.
Let's do this. Let's paint something.
Question 1. Is your glass half full or half empty?
Full.
What excites you, creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Dark fantasy, killing gods, butch lesbians with fucked up emotions, cats, frogs, Chinese fantasy, diasporic horror, body horror, violence, fantasy violence, and tragedy.
I feel like I want to just get that tattooed on my arm, like the entire response. What does not excite you, creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Oppression, racism, sexism, transphobia, heteronormativity, homophobia. I might have said that already, but I'm going to say it again.
It's worth saying.
Colonialism in games, in creation, in media, Orientalist approaches to fantasy, to world building, normative approaches, normie stuff. I'm going to say normie stuff. All white tables, tables of all white people and all white men. I would also say nihilism, climate nihilism, artistic nihilism. It's very uninteresting to me. As well as like any sort of like shock value jamming.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite sound?
Why is the first sound that came into my head buoy? That is not my favorite sound.
This is a no judgment zone, Connie. We let all our guests respond appropriately. Sometimes it's wildly inappropriate. Sometimes it's just weird shit that their brain just inputted. So whatever you feel speaks to your soul.
Listen, I don't want that to be my favorite sound on the record, though. Fair. To be fair, Nathan. My favorite sound varies, but I will say right now it's probably in Rose Colored Boy by Paramore. When Hayley Williams first starts and like the soundtrack is like do 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 do, and she goes rose colored boy. That part, that boy, when she says it for the first time, that's my favorite sound. Yeah.
What sound do you hate?
Ooh, well, the obvious is nails on a chalkboard. Can't stand it. I also do not like violin strings, even if they're not screeching. Just even any sort of high pitched when we're on that E string, I think is what it is. Mm-hmm. Any sort of high pitched violin string, even if it's by a virtuoso, by someone who's like really good, I can't stand it. I cannot stand it. Yeah, it's just too high for me.
What is your favorite word?
I have several. This
is your space and time.
I like the word convergence. I like the word mythology, synthesis, affluence. That's a fun word for me. Desiderium, wraith,
Yeah.
and crow.
What is your least favorite word?
Sperm, I guess. Panties and sperm. Yeah.
Panties has been said before on Reckless to Talk.
Yeah. I hate it. It's so infantilizing.
It's not good.
Okay. This is controversial, and no, this is not a knock on you if you use it at all. This is just, I just don't like it to be referred to me in any way. I just don't like it. I do not like the word NB to describe a non-binary, like to describe myself as a non-binary person. I don't like it, and I have my reasons for it, but I don't have to get into them.
What tabletop role-playing game or D&D monster, which of course can be, understood a variety of ways, have you not faced or run that you would love to?
Honestly, like a gelatinous cube.
Oh, it's so fun.
I've not faced or run a gelatinous cube. I have also not faced or run a mimic. And I would love to. I don't think I have
either, actually. I don't think I've ever used a mimic.
It's such a classic monster, but I've never done it. Mimic, a gelatinous cube. I honestly have not faced or truly run an owlbear. I've given a character an owlbear as a mount, but it not as like any sort of encounter before. Like that could be fun. And I've also not faced or run like any sort of like what is this? What am I trying to get at? What is this?
I don't know, but I'm into it, and I also want to run this monster. I don't know what the claw stompy hands are.
I'm just waving my hands up and down in a claw-like formation. Yeah. So whatever that is, yeah.
Got it. I would that immediately sold. Can I pre-order? Can I kickstart like the monster book or whatever needs to happen to make that real? Done. Sold. What is your favorite adventure of all time? And it can be a D&D adventure, it can be a pre-written thing, it can be something you watched, it can be something you ran or experienced, or a movie that you really love.
Oh, God. I don't ever really do modules, so this is a hard question for me. I've homebrewed a lot of adventures, and I would say I have two answers. One of them is for Transplanar in terms of my fate. It's hard for me to pick favorites for arcs, but in terms of just like level design, I guess, in terms of just narrative design, one of my favorite arcs is definitely arc 4, which is like a murder mystery arc set in a royal palace. But the kind of twist is that the person who will be the victim is a prophet. So they saw their own murder in advance, but they don't know who the murderer is, and they suspect that it's one of their 8 wives. So like that, and they can't investigate it on their own. So the PCs have to go around and like try to like interrogate the wives without setting off any alarms. And I think the way that I ran it, like the twist I introduced, like the various set pieces were very fun, and I'm very proud of the way that I structured it, I think. So that's my favorite adventure so far in the arcs that have come out, because I can't really, because I have my favorites too of the arcs that haven't yet premiered, but that's definitely one of my favorites. In terms of just generally speaking, in terms of media, I really enjoy the plot of Snowpiercer. I also really enjoy the plot and the twist, I think, the break into Act 3 of Mad Max Fury Road, when they decided to turn around and go back to the Citadel. I thought that blew my fucking mind the first time I saw it. What else? I think Get Out is just a fantastically written screenplay where every beat hits. So I study it as honestly a masterpiece of screenwriting. I really enjoy the themes of Spirited Away and the growth that the main character Chihiro goes through. Like, she grows so much, and it's incredible to witness, and I love it. And I also really like, obviously, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's my new favorite movie. It's literally, in my mind, a perfect movie. It does everything perfectly. It pushes the boundaries, artistically, but it also has such a strong story with grounding characters that make you give a shit. That is, it's honestly like a masterclass for me in terms of directing, acting, screenwriting, everything. That's my answer.
What is your favorite tabletop role-playing game character of all time? And again, can be interpreted any way that you choose to interpret it.
The favorite NPC I've ever embodied. Oh, this is so hard. I have
Yeah.
two. I have several, but these are my top two that I'm thinking of. One of them is Kane, who is a beautiful tiefling. Of course, one of my genders. Beautiful tiefling, who is like a murder tiefling, is what we call them. They start as a villain, but they become like an anti-hero as the players befriend them and like show them that there's another way. So like playing Kane, and they're so flamboyant. They're just so fun to play. So that's one of my favorite NPCs to play and embody. One of my other favorite NPCs that I've ever played or embodied would be Dr. Luso, who has been in the Second Stranger since Arc 1, episode like 3 or something. They are a major NPC, and their story is one that I've set up since the first act that is finally coming to a head in Arc 8, and I'm so excited. I'm like so excited about it. And my players, it's I don't, for lack of spoiling anything,
Yep.
like it's been amazing to just play through them. Generally speaking, this is more archetype, but I love a good anti-villain / anti-hero. I love a good complicated villain. I love a good like villain who's doing something for very human and relatable motivations, but the way they're doing it is questionable, or they feel like they've exhausted all options. I love a villain who in their story and their mind is a hero, or at the very least a victim, but in a way that isn't like, I want to genocide everyone and I'm a victim, because I think that's a very like fascistic and normative way of dealing with villainy. Like, I'm less interested in that. I'm a lot more interested in like genuine moral complications in villains who are in some ways actually genuinely redeemable, which is also why I don't put racism into my game, because I think if you have a racist villain, they can never be redeemable. And if you like, anyway, I have other thoughts, but I'm going to stop the tangent there. But yeah.
Last question. Connie, what gives you hope?
One of them is definitely my partner. I gotta shout them out, C. Thomas, at Pyshapart on Twitter. They give me a lot of hope about everything. Myself, Transplanar, the world. So that's one very strong answer. The other is the friends I've made and the people I've met who believe in me, who support me, who encourage me, and who like are truly, like, I can tell are like truly invested in me as like a creator and as a person too. Like, that means a lot. That gives me hope. And generally speaking, so starting from when I was in high school or so, like 14, 15, I have always been a strong proponent against adultism and for like youth power. And I'm 25 now, and I am still very much a strong proponent against adultism and for youth power. And I truly do believe that like young people who are attuned to like the injustices and the inequities of the world and want to do something about it, especially if it's through an artistic way, like that gives me hope. Like, I see like the really awesome, dope things that young folks and younger folks than me are like putting out there, and I feel so much hope, right? And my peers as well, right? That gives me a lot of hope. Just like the other really dope, cool trans people of color, queer people of color in the space who are fucking killing the game. Like, there are so many of us out there who are just killing it and doing such incredible things that it really does give me hope for like the future of TTRPGs and the future of the world. Like, I am cautiously but also pragmatically optimistic, I think, about it.
Connie, congratulations. You have made it. You have made it to the end of the dungeon that is Reckless a Talk. As a gesture of appreciation and goodwill, could you please tell everyone again who you are, where to find you, how best to support you?
Absolutely. It has been a total pleasure, Nathan. Thank you so much for having me on. I have been Connie. My pronouns are they, he, and she. You can find me all across the internet at by Connie Chang. That's BYCONNIECHANG. As I've blabbed about for a million years on this segment, I am the GM and creative producer for Transplanar RPG, which is, of course, an all transgender POC-led dark fantasy D&D show. So you can follow Transplanar on all social media platforms, Twitch, YouTube, any sort of podcast situation, Twitter at Transplanar RPG. That's TRANS, like a trans person. Planar as an interplanar travel, so PLANAR RPG. And that's been me. I'll pass things back to you, Nathan. This has been such a joy and pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, it was wonderful. You are definitely a person in the space who I greatly admire, enjoy, respect, all the things. So this was genuine joy for me as well. I really appreciate it. We'll have all of the links in the show notes for anyone who is interested. But otherwise, Connie, thank you and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Is there any sort of like reckless ATOC sign off that you do?
No, it is vague, in much in the same way of starting kind of in the weird, like, lead in. It's also kind of like a weird fade out. So please deliver a classic Connie catchphrase to take us out. That'll be the button.
Completely out of context. Thanks so much for listening. Nathan, thank you so much for having me on. And Spizo, Bizo.
No notes.